Welcome to the second tutorial on steampunk jewelry pendants. Now at this point you should have already baked your clay according to the instructions on the Sculpey package, which is usually 275, and it's about 10 to 15 minutes and it's per quarter inch. So the time really depends on how thick you made the pieces. Now as you can see, mine have already baked and cooled off, and now what we're going to do is go ahead and cut out our little images on this photo paper. Now again, if you don't want the ink to run or to get sort of almost like a highlight or additional lines on your photos, almost a distortion, then you do at this point want to go ahead and cover your photos with something like Mod Podge, something that's going to dry clear, but basically it's just a craft paste, and you'll want to let it dry completely, probably a few hours before baking. And so what I'm actually doing though is I'm not using that because I do want sort of a distorted effect. I think it looks better with the steampunk type pendants. So these are, the ink basically is going to run a little bit on these and it's going to sort of discolor, but for me I think that makes more of a vintage and kind of a worn look. So I'm going to basically start picking out the pictures. And one thing I wanted to show you really quick before we move on is notice the difference between the straight and the curved blade on these scissors. Now the curved scissors are fantastic if you're cutting out round or oval type shapes. You may not have chosen rectangles like I have. The best thing for the rectangles usually is a guillotine cutter, but obviously I couldn't show you that on a YouTube video. They're pretty big and kind of hard to get in the camera, but that's what I usually use. But just for this demonstration purposes, I'm just using a regular pair of straight scissors. The curved blades you can get at any craft store, and they usually will run you about $16, and they are absolutely fabulous. You get nice round edges, and they're really great. So what I'm doing now is just basically picking out the pictures that I want to match with the different clay, and of course the clay is cool. I've already baked it, and I'm just trimming the edges, making sure they fit properly on the pieces. Now remember, if you don't get it perfectly, that's okay, because later on you can go, and even after you bake it and clear coat it, you can sand it down. That's not a problem, so don't worry if it's not nigh on perfect. Now this is what we're going to use to adhere the pictures to the baked Sculpey, and it's called Sculpey Bake and Bond. And usually it's a little difficult to get out of the spout, so I'll just take off the lid and use a paintbrush, just a cheap paintbrush. You don't want to use an expensive paintbrush because it will tear up your brush eventually. So I just use some that I bought at Walmart for, you know, $5 or $6. But basically you want to coat. It's going to be kind of thick. It goes on like an Elmer's glue. As you can see, it's kind of hard to move around, but you want to get both the side of the clay and the image, and you really want to press firmly on there. It's even a good idea sometimes to use something that's very flat and hard to just sort of press into the pieces, but not too hard because you don't want to crush the Sculpey and break it. The great thing about the Bake and Bond though is you can glue raw clay to raw clay, you can glue baked clay to baked clay, just about anything you can imagine. This will bond it to the Sculpey. It's fantastic. It's one of my favorite products, and I use it all the time, especially in these polymer clay necklaces like this. It works really well. Again, you just want to make sure that you're getting a nice layer on all ends, and then you want to cover the photo as well. It is kind of messy, so don't worry if you get some of it. Obviously you want to make sure you don't have it sort of all over the place, but if you get a little on the edges, remember we can always sand it down. The main thing is you want to get around the edges of the photo to really press it in there. Now if you did paint your photos with Mod Podge, it's going to have kind of a hazy look to it. When you bake it, that haze should go away, so don't fret if that does happen. And I might go ahead and do another tutorial on that and just show you the difference. But we're just going to go ahead and keep painting these pictures on, just really getting on the surface here and just covering it really well. Especially the edges, because you don't want them to sort of buckle, because they will. If they're not pressed in really well, you'll sort of get a curve to the images, and they won't stick as well to the Sculpey that's been baked. And something to always remember too, it's kind of stuck on here, is you want to make sure that you're picking a good color scheme with the backs. As you can see with the black and white print there, I use the gray or the pewter color. You know, and ones with more red tones, I use the colors, you know, the pictures that had a little more pink in them or a little more red, or anything complementary. Because you do want a little bit of the backing to show through the image. As you can see with that yellow and green image there, you can see a little bit of the red. And again, don't worry if, you know, the edges are not exactly where you want them. We can always sand them down with sandpaper, or you can do like I do and use a Dremel, which comes in very, very handy. If you do any kind of jewelry work at all, that is going to be your best friend. Saves you lots and lots of time, especially when it comes to sanding and polishing. So just finishing up these last two. Just making sure I'm getting the edges here. And as we wind up, I'm just going to paste these last two on. And again, I hope that you subscribe and you like this tutorial, and stay tuned for the third, which will be coming up shortly. And thanks for watching.